Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Pinnacle Financial Partners, an equal housing lender, committed to the dream of home ownership with $213 million in affordable home loans made to people of low to moderate income in 2023. PNFP.com/home.
I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. Time to play some ball. Yes, today as the Major League season gets underway, we're talking baseball. Not just peanuts and hot dogs, but also what America's pastime looks like here in Middle Tennessee. We're talking about the Negro League legacies, Little League champions, accessibility in the sport. That's all coming up. But first, Buster Olney is a senior writer for ESPN and reporter for ESPN's Baseball Tonight. He is a Vanderbilt graduate and a former baseball reporter for the Nashville Banner. Buster, thank you so much for joining us to talk about some baseball.
Absolutely, Khalil. Great to talk with you.
It looks like it's actually happening after a little bit of a lockout that was happening earlier in the offseason. So tell me, what are you most excited about as the Major League season opens?
Yeah, and you referenced the lockout. There was a lot of concern within the sport that the labor situation was going to keep baseball shut down maybe for a month or 2 months. In fact, a prominent agent told me back in December, look, I'll see you on Flag Day, which was June 14th. But they got that settled. They got the players into spring training. There's been a big rush for everybody to get ready for opening day. And now as we go forward, it's about the young players. There's always been a question about, why doesn't baseball market its players as well as other sports? The fact is, baseball has this incredible generation of young players, whether it's Juan Soto of the Washington Nationals, Ronald Acuna Jr., the Atlanta Braves. Of course, last year, so much attention to Shohei Ohtani. There are just a lot of exciting players in baseball these days.
What about some of the changes to the rules? Like, what's different this year, and what's your sense of how fans are responding to that?
Well, the most prominent change, I think, for casual viewers will be these devices that catchers are using now to signal pitchers. That's going to be really interesting. So they have a transmitter on the forearm of their left wrist, and so the catcher will punch the buttons, fastball outside, and there'll be a voice that'll be built into the cap of the pitchers through a listening device, as well as 3 other players. And so that all that time we've seen spent in the past, where the pitcher's giving the signs with his fingers, stepping off, maybe the catcher forgets the signs. That's all going to be streamlined now. Okay. And that'll, I think, really change the game. 2 other significant changes. One, the National League has never used the DH on a regular basis before this year. Moving forward, baseball will have the designated hitter used for all teams. And the last one is baseball expanded its playoff field this year from 10 teams to 12 teams. So if you're a fan of a mid-market team, a small market team, you might feel a little bit more hope going up against the big dogs like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers.
I really like the expansion of the playoffs. I know they did it for COVID, and I really appreciate that. I just think it adds more excitement and, like you said, more opportunity for fans to buy into the entire season and the playoffs. So let's go back in time a little bit. You started covering our minor league team, the Sounds, for the Nashville Banner back in 1989. Take me back to that time. I mean, what was Nashville like as a sports town back then?
Oh, well, first off, whenever the conversation has come up about whether or not there should be expansion of Major League Baseball, I always tell people, look, I'm biased, but Nashville is an unbelievable sports town, just a ravenous appetite for sports. At that time, the Sounds were one of the highest drawing teams in the minor leagues. The city itself looks so different. When I go back there, I go on the same streets that I drove on before, but you're looking around at the landmarks, and they just don't look the same. It's so crowded. There's so much energy in the place. A few years ago, I went to a Predators game and was just blown away, not only by that area and how that's built up, but by the energy level in that place. So at that time, it was a little bit more sleepy, not as many fans, but there was always that passion for sports.
What was it like to be a sports reporter in that version of Nashville?
Well, at that time, I'm a young, 24, 25 reporter, and getting my first chance to talk to players for me, it was just a great learning experience. Guys like Skeeter Barnes were on that team. He was an all-time great Nashville Sound. He, now works as a coach in the minor leagues. And to learn about, the day-to-day in covering a team, the ups and downs, guys being promoted to the big leagues, guys being demoted. I always tell people that AAA is a unique level because the players are only one phone call away from being in the show in the big leagues, and on the other hand, they're also one phone call away from being down in the minor leagues in much less plush conditions.
There was no major sports team back in '89, so were the Sounds a much bigger deal then?
There's no doubt. And I've seen the interest in a lot of teams because you didn't have the Titans. You weren't competing with the Predators. When I was going to Vanderbilt, that place was packed. Memorial Gym was packed every game. And now, this when I see attendance figures, 6,000, 7,000, I think that just reflects the menu that if you're a sports fan, you can draw from.
Do you have any good stories from your time as a beat reporter that you're at liberty to share?
So Skeeter Barnes was the outfielder. He wound up playing like 6 years in the major league, some with the Detroit Tigers. I grew up in central Vermont, and I always fashioned myself as maybe the greatest wiffle ball pitcher to ever come out of central Vermont.
Okay.
So I talked a lot of smack with Skeeter, and one day he's like, okay, let's go out. And he had a wooden bat. I faced him in wiffle ball. I struck him out 6 times. He threw down the bat in anger as some of the other players had a lot of fun at his expense. And I remember once I wrote a column in 1989 that was very critical of a young Yankees outfielder named Deion Sanders. Deion didn't like that story very much, and he sent a baseball up to the press box which said on it, and I still have the baseball, if you write like that your whole life, you'll always be a loser.
Wow. I'm sure you have plenty of stories like that and wonderful memorabilia. Almost no one really covers minor leagues anymore, but you got a chance to do that. How did that experience shape your career as a sports writer?
I think it made me understand in covering a whole team of players that you had to be attuned to everybody. At that time, the best players on the team were guys like Jack Armstrong and Chris Hammond, who had long careers in the big leagues. And you naturally gravitate toward those guys. But I remember once it was a relief pitcher named Jeff Gray, who also pitched in the big leagues, who I hadn't talked to in a few weeks, and he had a bad game, blew a save. And I walked up to him, after the game to ask him about it, and he goes, "Hey, when's the last time you spoke with me?" That was educational for me to understand that, not only was it smart to keep in touch with everybody when you work in a beat and to have a feel for everybody, how everyone's feeling, but you know what? You can find sources all over clubhouses. So years later, when I worked at the New York Times covering the New York Yankees, my best clubhouse source was actually the 25th guy in the team, an infielder named Homer Bush, whose mind was anecdotal, and he could always relate these great stories to me. And I learned all that when I was covering the Nashville Sounds.
We're talking about Nashville. Your alma mater, Vanderbilt, has become a real college baseball powerhouse. What was Vandy baseball like back in the 80s?
It was good, but it certainly wasn't the powerhouse it is now. And when I go to Hawkins Field and I look at the area where they have these beautiful seating and that incredible facility that David Price helped to create with his donation. I was just there a month ago. I'm just amazed. Same freshman class as that I was in was Joey Cora, who went on to play in the big leagues with the Seattle Mariners. He's now the third base coach for the New York Mets. It was just so different. In fact, it was so indistinct, I think, relative to the rest of sports, that I would always say that the true sports superstars coming out of Vanderbilt were the sports writers. Guys like Tyler Kepner of the New York Times and Dave Shine of the Washington Post. And so I always joke with guys like Dansby Swanson of the Braves, with David Price and others, Pedro Alvarez, saying, you know what? You guys ruined it for us. Like the sports writers, Skip Bayless's, we used to be the stars coming out of Vanderbilt, but now it's the baseball players because that program is so great.
In big league circles, how does Vandy stack up when it comes to looking at future draft prospects?
Oh, it's not even close. They're number one. In fact, some of my colleagues will always joke that, oh, great, Buster's going to go into a clubhouse and he's going to have a secret handshake with somebody. I'm in Atlanta as I speak with you now. I'm going to the Braves clubhouse tonight. There's Dansby Swanson, and I'm going to talk to Kyle Wright. You definitely feel a special bond, and I always feel a pride And it's not only because those guys have had success, but the thing is that they just have so many great people come out of that program, right? And it feels like that no matter, whether you bump into a guy like Ryan Flaherty or a Pedro Alvarez or a Dansby Swanson, they're great people. Coach Corbin turns out great people.
You mentioned Major League Baseball earlier, and you're biased a little bit, I would say, maybe. There is an effort to bring Major League Baseball here to Nashville, and I'm curious, what do you think the chances are of Nashville finally landing a big league team?
So I own the family farm, or part of the family farm that I grew up on. I would bet the family farm that within 10 years, you will have Major League Baseball being played in Nashville. It's the site that everybody talks about, I think more than others that are going to be considered, whether it's Portland or whether it's Charlotte. The fact that the Titans have had so much success, the Predators have had so much success that when people talk about atmosphere in an arena, they always refer to the Predators. I know Major League Baseball officials who've gone to Nashville to go watch those games because of what they hear. Major League Baseball has two franchises that are very troubled with their ballpark situations, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Oakland Athletics. Now that this next labor deal has been signed, their ballpark situations are next on the docket. Once baseball gets that resolved, I have no doubt that the owners will say, okay, we're going to be ready for two expansion teams, and I would bet the family farm that Nashville will get one of those two teams.
That is ESPN senior baseball writer and former Nashvilleian Buster Olney. Buster, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Khalil, thanks for having me.
We have to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to remember our city's Negro League team, the Nashville Stars. Do you have memories to share? Tweet us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. It's officially the start of baseball season. Now, Nashville is not exactly a baseball town. I mean, we've got the Nashville Sounds, whose opening day was Tuesday. They're 1-2, by the way. And we have a few great college teams. But we don't have a Major League Baseball team, at least not yet. But there's a push to change that. The nonprofit Music City Baseball is a part of that effort. The hope is to bring an MLB team here and name it the Nashville Stars in honor of a Negro Leagues baseball team by the same name that was here back in the 1940s. Now, we'll get back to the Negro Leagues history in a minute. But first, let us head out to Music City Baseball, where our producer, Tasha A.F. Lemley, met one local baseball enthusiast during a tailgate for the recent UT Vandy game.
It's not enough to call Skip Nipper a baseball fan. He's more like a baseball maestro, a historian, author, and a collector of stories. It was his dad who first taught him to play, and he continues that legacy as a member of a handful of groups, like the Nashville Old Timers Baseball Association and the Society of American Baseball Research. Skip says these groups keep him roaming within the circles of baseball people, which is where we find him today. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon, and Skip's tailgating ahead of the UT Vandy game with fellow baseball fan Chris Bacon.
I sit here when Skip talks, I just sit there like a little kid and I listen because he knows he's forgotten more about baseball than I'll ever know about baseball.
The key word is talks. I talk way too much. That's a problem. I talk too much.
At this tailgate, Skip is in his element. There's a food truck and an atmosphere of joy and maybe a little post-winter relief. Skip, collector of stories that he is, takes me on a journey through the crowd.
This is Ro Coleman. You played at Vanderbilt. What's on your mind when Tim Corbin sends you up to the bat and he needs a hit and you give him one and you're on first base? What's the thought process there?
I mean, for me, it's just baseball. On the baseball field, that's my playground. So it's like, it's no pressure. It's like having fun. It's like, I'm going to get the job done. Like, you pick the right guy, you know I'm going to get it done for you.
And what's in the future for you?
For me, just continue to grow within the community, providing more opportunities within the game of baseball, creating more diversity, and just being where I need to be and helping others get to the places that they need to be.
And this is going to be published. So when I ask you this question and you're going to say yes, you've decided never to move out of Nashville because you're so important to the community here.
No, at this moment, I'm here in Nashville.
I'm just kidding.
No, but I really love Nashville. It's growing a lot, and I'm loving the way it's growing, and I don't see myself moving or leaving anytime soon.
On to some reminiscing with Dwight Lewis. He played at Tennessee State.
Well, I played in the mid '60s, late '60s. Played a little baseball at Tennessee State, but I rode the bench mostly. I was not a good hitter, so when I played, it was fun. We played over at where Hadley Park is located. I remember my first World Series. The Brooklyn Dodgers played the New York Yankees. Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, Duke Snyder, Gil Hodges, Carl Furillo, Pee Wee Reese, all played for the Dodgers. And in that World Series, a fellow named Sandy Ambrose, he was an outfielder. Yeah, left fielder. He went back to the wall and caught the ball to make the game-winning catch, and he said, "Me no see wall, me see ball."
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Then Skip heads over to Mac Lipsey and his friend Helen Barrett.
Earlier that you had seen a game at Sulphur Dell, which was Nashville's old ballpark, which overlaps in the area of First Tennessee Park right now. It's in the same vicinity.
I went there when I was 13 years old, and I'm 89 now. So that was 70-something years ago. My brother took me. And I remember I was telling him I remember two things. I remember how the right field went up a hill, and the right fielder had to run up the hill to catch a fly ball. And I remember the ice cream bars they had in the stadium that were so good. I ate as many as I possibly could. But talk to Helen. She's the baseball nut.
Well, I wanted to play, but I was a girl, and that girls didn't play. Okay? And then I played in the streets with the boys, but when they had made, lineups for teams and got uniforms, they didn't include me. But I played anyway, and I learned to throw, and I'd stand in front of the mirror, and I'd try to throw like Don Newcomb, who was a Dodger, the Brooklyn Dodger. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I never got over the perfect game that Don Larson threw. And I remember Jackie Robinson stealing home. And I love to play, but listen to this. I still love baseball. I played with my kids. I would pitch batting practice in their Little League games. And about 15 years ago, I was watching a TV program, and there were some women like my age out in Hendersonville, and they were playing ball. They were playing ball out there, and I found the team, Nashville Senior Stars, and they said, "Well, where'd you play?" I said, "I never played." "Not in college? High school?" "No, we didn't have teams." They said, "Well, let me see you play at third," and they put me at third because I could make the throw to first. I had been warming up for that moment all my life, and I was 60 years old.
It's stuff like this that makes Skip love the sport.
To be able to hear those stories, it just number one, it resonates with me deep inside because I love the game and I love to hear the stories.
He says, really, it's the fans that are special. And hearing these stories keeps the hope for a major league team alive.
I think that'll happen. I hope it happens in my lifetime because there's no timetable for it. But it will help a young little boy that played baseball in his early years. I'm going to be that little boy again through my grandchildren, taking them to see a Major League Baseball game in Nashville one day.
If the local effort prevails, that team would bear the namesake of one of our town's old Negro League teams. Joining me now is Dr. Harriet Kimbro-Hamilton. She's the daughter of baseball legend Henry Kimbro, who played 17 seasons in the Negro Leagues in Nashville and Baltimore for the Elite Giants. She's published 2 books about him, and she joins us in studio now. Harriet, welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you with us. So tell me about your father, Henry Kimbro. What kind of man was he?
Well, my father was a no-nonsense individual. He was born in Nashville in 1912. So he grew up seeing a lot of discriminatory adventures, prejudice against blacks in Nashville, and that kind of made him a little hardcore in terms of dealing with people. And so he was a standoffish individual that if he didn't speak, that meant he had nothing to say. And he would speak only when he had something to say, and then he would say it, and then he would be done with it. So he was that type of individual that kind of bore the burden of growing up in a harsh environment. He was the seventh child of 10 kids. Father died at an early age for him, and his mother had to support all of those kids and bring them up. So pretty harsh background for him.
How did he develop his love for baseball?
Well, of course, during that time, baseball was it. There was no football, there was no basketball. When the kids got together to play, and all they needed was an empty field, and you could get rocks to be bases. I mean, we did that when I was playing with the boys, and you would play baseball. And so he could always go to a field, and there was always a game. And baseball was it. Every kid wanted to play baseball.
So how did he go from playing sandlot ball to playing in the Negro Leagues?
Well, during that time, we have to talk about a man called Tom Wilson. And Tom Wilson was a big, enthusiastic individual about baseball. He loved baseball. He was sort of an average ball player, but he loved baseball. But he was also a very successful businessman here in Nashville, considered one of the richest men in Nashville, black or white. And so he used his money to buy a team in 1918, and later that team became the Nashville Eli Giants. And so during that time, there were several leagues in the country. And of course, we have to give homage to Rube Foster, who started the Negro Leagues because the black players were not allowed to play in Major League Baseball. And so with that being said, Tom Wilson began to build the Negro Southern League. And so his Eli Giants played in the Negro Southern League and won 1921, 1922, 1929, I think. So the Eli Giants, the Nashville Eli Giants, were a powerhouse.
You've written 2 books about your father. Your most recent book about him and his teammates is called Home Plate, Henry Kimbro and Other Negro Leaguers of Nashville, Tennessee. What inspired you to write about him?
Well, the first book was about him because he had a story to tell. My father had a scrapbook, and the first book was called Daddy's Scrapbook. And when I looked in the scrapbook, there were 60-year-old pictures of Roy Campanella, Satchel Paige, who was intending to play in Nashville at one time, brought here by Tom Wilson. And so there were newspaper articles about him, his statistics, and then I began to understand that Daddy just wasn't the plain Joe Blow playing baseball.
Okay.
He was very good. He qualified to go to 7 All-Star games, and
Wow.
this is against a bunch like a Satchel Paige and Cool Papa Bell and the like. So he was pretty good at this. And Tom Wilson recruited him to play for the Nashville Eli Giants.
How'd you feel when you realized that, hey, my dad is good?
I was shocked because to me, he was like Clark Kent. He never spoke about baseball. He never shared baseball with us, with my brother and I. And he was just Daddy and the owner of Bill's Cab Company during that time. And it wasn't until after he passed that my mother gave me this, book that he kept. And I thought, well, where did this come from? Where has this been hiding? But that was the kind of man he was. He didn't toot his own horn ever. Mm-hmm. He was about what was going on during that time, raising a family and running a business.
When you were working on this book, I'm curious, like, how you put it together. Did you rely on stories from other players? Was it heavily about this scrapbook that your dad kept with all sorts of stats and info?
Yes. I started with the story of Tom Wilson. Well, of course, telling my dad's story of how he got into Negro League baseball. And then it kind of unfolded when I began to see the stats. And yes, I interviewed several of the Negro Leaguers that were still alive. And they had a lot of stories about my dad. A couple I couldn't print, but I wouldn't print. But they were good stories because, and I'll share one. One of the Jim Zapp, one of the players, Jim Zapp, played with my dad. He's no longer here. But he said, you know what? I played with Kimbro, and a lot of the players were very, they were scared of him because he had a temper. Mm-hmm. My father also had a temper, and that's why he was quiet, because he didn't want to explode. And so he said, I got along with Kimbro. All you had to do was do your part in the game. When he would get mad is when people would mess up. And he had a problem with them. And so the other players took that as a personal attack instead of an attack on them as a player. And so a lot of the information about my dad, if you read in all of the Negro League books, they will call him mean, aloof, hard to coach, hard to get along with. And he wasn't about that. He was about winning. He wanted to win. And he felt like everyone should have that type of attitude. And they all didn't, of course. They enjoyed themselves. My dad didn't enjoy himself. He took baseball like a business. I'm here to win. I'm here to play good. I'm here to play hard. And that was the kind of man he was.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking about our city's Negro League with Dr. Harriet Kimbro-Hamilton, daughter of baseball legend Henry Kimbro. Now, your first book, Daddy's Scrapbook, we mentioned it, and, you know, I would love to see if you would mind reading us a passage from your book.
Well, unfortunately, I brought the second book.
Okay.
But it's just as good because it's more about the Negro Leagues here in Nashville and all of the players that made Nashville their home here.
Okay.
Their pictures in there, their positions, what teams they played, their career. So I felt that was important.
Even better.
The passage that I would like to read is about Tom Wilson's park. Tom Wilson was the first African-American to build and own his own baseball stadium park. Mm-hmm. And so this was the vibe of the park. Mr. Wilson went on to build the first Black-owned baseball stadium in the South. For the biggest games, the stadium was described as, and I am quoting from a person that wrote about this event, a social gathering place where everybody came to visit as well. Sunday was a big day. The women would have on their Sunday church dresses, and all the girls would be dressed up in their best clothes. There was an area along third base side of the field where teenage patrons congregated during the games. There was no better place in Nashville to meet girls. Today, an historic sign on 2nd Avenue on the south side of Nashville marks the spot of the former stadium.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. I had no idea.
It was a social gathering for African Americans. And, of course, baseball was in everybody's mind. And, of course, having a African American team here, that was the biggest thing. It was as big as a concert if we would have, Snoop Dogg come down. Not that I'm a fan of Snoop Dogg, okay? But
he was just here.
I know. I didn't go. But I'm saying that it was that big a deal for the black community. And the word got around. North, south, east, west, it didn't matter where you lived. They all came to see this team and other teams that came.
It was 75 years ago that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball, playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers, which opened a door for greats like Willie Mays to jump from the Negro Leagues to the MLB. Do you have a sense of how your dad reacted when Jackie Robinson made that leap to the big leagues?
They all were very proud. I spoke with each one of them, and that was one of my major questions. How did you feel about Jackie Robinson and Major League Baseball? They were all proud. Now, there was one, I won't say his name, he said he thought that would never happen because he didn't think that the whites in the baseball in the country would ever allow a black to play a game with them. And, of course, we saw the brutal treatment of Jackie Robinson and what he had to go through. And I asked most of them, and I asked my dad, I said, could you have done what Jackie Robinson did? And he was very frank about it. He said no, because, and I'm quoting, somebody would be in the jail and somebody would be under the jail. End of quote.
That's right. You don't mess with Mr. Kimbro. One question for you. We had Jackie Robinson break that barrier, but then there were greats like Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, which people in baseball argue that these are some of the greatest baseball players to walk the planet, no matter what league they played in. How did the men you interviewed feel about that? Like these legendary players didn't have the opportunity to play on the world's biggest stage.
They did not have an expectation that that would ever happen. And when it did, they felt good because they were very proud that they were keeper of the flames. That's what I call it. They kept the dream alive for the Jackie Robinsons and the others, Roy Campanella, that played with my father on the Baltimore Elite teams. They kept the flame alive and going for them. So they felt very responsible and proud.
What do you want people to understand about the Negro League and what it means to Nashville?
Well, Nashville was a vital place of growth for African Americans. You can't say that in some parts of the country. But as a born Nashvilleian, I'm very proud of it being a progressive city, very progressive. And so it was seen as a progressive city to the blacks during that time when Tom Wilson had a team. And so they knew that this mean better times were coming, that there was always hope, and they got to see some of the best in the league right here in Nashville. So that gave them hope that life would be better for African Americans and that things will grow and flourish in Nashville. And they did.
That is Dr. Harriet Kimbro-Hamilton. She is a TSU professor and a baseball historian and author of the book Home Plate, Henry Kimbro and Other Negro Leaguers of Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate you being with us. We have to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about accessibility in the sport, starting with a trip out to Springfield to meet a new special needs baseball league. Join the conversation by tweeting us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back.
You can. You can be a little louder than that. Can you hear me?
A few hundred people are gathered at J. Travis Price Park for the City of Springfield's 2022 baseball and softball opening ceremony.
This year we began our Springfield Buddies baseball program. With the hope for getting enough players for one team, we were blown away at the amount of participation this received. We have 40 registered players in this league, giving us 4 teams in our first ever season. That's right. Come on.
The Springfield Buddies League is a volunteer-based adaptive sports league and one of the few opportunities in Middle Tennessee for athletes with special needs. Interest exceeded all expectations, and the players span in age from 3 to 64. Andy Smith is the head coach. He says his son Aiden is excited.
He's asked me every day for like the last 3 months, is it time to go play baseball yet? Is it time to play baseball yet? I'm like, it's coming, buddy.
My favorite part is a long, good thing because I love it so much because I wait to play.
Ethan Gatley is another player in the Buddies League. He and his mom Jennifer are new to town, and they were part of an adaptive league back in California.
Hey, Coach Ethan, are you excited to play baseball? Did you miss playing baseball? Okay, can you use your words? You excited?
Excited.
To be able to get out to the field again, to be able to be around, other adults and children with, the same struggles that we go through, and to be around the parents too, to become like a community. It's just kind of exciting to get back out on the field, especially after COVID that shut us down for 2 years.
Seth Owen is athletic programmer for the city of Springfield.
Baseball is important because it is a game that you can most mimic to the game of life. Baseball is a game of failure. If a baseball player in the major leagues fails 70% of the time, they're a Hall of Fame quality player. So that teaches you that you're going to fail, and you need to be able to get back up. You need to be able to hold your head up and keep on moving through life, because there's going to be another opportunity that you get that you need to be able to jump on and make the most of it.
This is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil A. Colonna. Opening day for the Springfield Buddies is April 18th if you want to show these athletes some support. Joining us now are a few Little League coaches, Ronald Gooch from East Nashville and Joey Hale, who coaches in Goodlettsville. Welcome to This is Nashville.
How's it going, man?
Doing all right. Really a pleasure to have you guys with us. So, Gooch, what got you into coaching Little League baseball?
Man, I think it was a couple years ago. East Nashville Athletics had just been revitalized from the flood from 2011. And we were previously just Neely. And a couple of my kids that I was coaching in soccer at the YMCA decided to play baseball over there at East Nashville Athletics. And obviously they needed a coach. And I was excited to come over and to get into the sport. And to continue to grow the community over here in East Nashville. And I've been here with East Nashville Athletics for the last 11 to 12 years and have really enjoyed my time getting to know all our families and all of our kids here.
How about you, Joey?
It's pretty much about my dad. I mean, he coached at Parkwood, which is back where East Nashville Little League used to be Jess Neely back in the day. So they played against Jess Neely all those years. So I pretty much followed him around. He started coaching in the early 70s and pretty much retired from Parkwood around 82, 83, 84. And pretty much my whole childhood memory is just following him around the state tournaments and Dixie Youth World Series and stuff like that. And when I got older and my son started playing ball, he wanted, my dad to coach his team. So I started coaching with my dad. And been coaching ever since. It's just like a passion. I guess it's just ingrained in me from him. And I'm so thankful that I get to do this.
So, Joey, you've coached teams that have made appearances at the Little League World Series. Tell me, what was that like?
That, my dad got to experience the first one in 2012 when we played Japan for the whole thing. And I remember one of the guys up there, one of the beat writers or something, asking him the difference and how it was for him, because he always wanted to have a chance to go to Williamsport and take part in that tournament. And he said, man, you could roll up all the other tournaments I've ever coached in into one, and it still doesn't compare to going to the Little League World Series. This is that great. It's an unbelievable experience. I think back then I said it was like Christmas on steroids or something, because the way the ESPN treats the kids, they get the royal treatment. They get all kinds of free gear, from the bats that you see on TV and the helmets and catcher's gear and cleats and Oakley sunglasses, you name it, they get all that stuff. And it's 2 weeks of bliss for the kids. And we had the fortune of being able to go twice. So, the second time around was just as exciting for me because you never know when you're ever going to get back again. So you have to, enjoy every moment as best you can.
Is that a message you referred to your players? Like, hey, we're here. Enjoy this moment. It'll be one that you hold with you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. My dad, he coached for 20 plus years, and he always told me that if you make it to that level, there's no more pressure because you're there. So the hard part is getting there. Once you're there, enjoy it. Don't go up there and be serious and you want to win, but you want to enjoy the experience too, because the problem with youth sports in general is the parents and the adults. They take it way too serious, and then it makes the experience for the kids terrible. And when you go up to like Williamsport or something like that, you do run into coaches that are just wound so tight that they can't enjoy the experience and their players can't either. So it's just best just to be relaxed, cut up with the kids, have a good time, let them enjoy the experience. And then, they'll have something to look back on, years later as, man, that was one of the best things I ever did in my life, was going up there and doing that. So, it's just, for me, that's just what I want to do for kids, just try to give them the best experience possible.
I'm thinking about what we heard from Seth Owen in Springfield, how the game of baseball mimics life, like you just referred to, Joey. Gooch, when you're coaching kids, I can imagine that there's so many opportunities for teaching life lessons and how to build community. Tell me about that experience for you.
Well, I think the opportunity for us, and Joey experiences in Goodlettsville as well. Baseball is one of those sports that brings kids together who, in some cases may not look like one another, different economic and financial backgrounds. All the demographics are put in that dugout, in that outfield, in the infield, and for at least an hour and a half. Those boys boys and girls are able to just take what they know and express it through athletics. I've seen so many times, I've seen families. I mean, when I say families, families of 3, 4, 5, 6 kids run through our league, and they just clinch on to other families, and that becomes your next carpool person, or that becomes, your new real estate agent. And especially over here in East Nashville here recently, within the last 2 years, we had a very tragic tornado run through our community that the only thing it did was made it stronger. And the baseball league was also here for our family and our kids to give us some sort of normalcy once we were able to break through that. And then we also had to fight through COVID. So our children and our communities are a lot more resilient than what we give them credit for. I think the fragility of it comes from, as Joey mentioned, people who are a little bit wound up and tight just about life in general. You got to enjoy every moment. And so the opportunities to create community here, they happen every single day with every single thing that we do.
You've both been coaching Little League Baseball for a while, and you've seen former players grow up. Do you keep in touch? Joey, do you keep in touch with your former players?
Absolutely. One of them is coaching with me this year, Seth Marlin. He was on the 2012 Little League World Series team. He was our backup first baseman and pitcher. He was probably 5'3", 5'2" back then, one of the smallest kids on the team, and today he's 6'2". And this year is the 10-year anniversary of that team going to the World Series. And so they had opening ceremonies for him. He got to throw out the first pitch. Jason Brown, who was our center fielder, his dad is Kip Brown, the head coach of the Beach high school basketball team. He came back and threw out a first pitch. Oops, that may be us. Hold on a second. No, so sorry about that. Jake Rucker just got drafted by the Minnesota Twins. I saw him at our state tournament last year in Gallatin. Him and his little brother Carson came by to visit. I've heard from Luke Brown. Luke Brown's at Austin Peay right now pitching. I've heard from Brock Myers. He's still at Tennessee Tech pitching. And a few others here and there. They come and go. They come to the park, and a lot of them will talk to you and like, hey, Coach, how's it going? And you got to kind of look at them for a minute just to remember who they are when they come back, because they change so much when they get older. But, yeah, I keep in touch with a lot of them.
I just want to let everybody know Joey works as a firefighter, so it was potential he would have had to go and handle and be a hero. Let me ask this quick question to you, Gooch. How can we make baseball more accessible to everyone?
Man, you know what? I think that's one of the ongoing questions that every league has, right? I think one of the things that leagues need to strive to do really well is to find engagement points, right? Find, where can we most engage the most amount of people, the most diverse group of people, and how can we make it relatable to them? A lot of times, as I think it was Dr. Harriet before us, spoke to the lack of African American players that are currently playing baseball right now.
Open it up. I've got a couple seconds left. I've got to jump in there. That's
Go
Little
ahead.
League baseball coach Ronald Gooch. He was joined by Joey Hale from the Goodlettsville Little League. Thank you both for being with us. Now it's time for me to hop out of my host chair and into the passenger seat. Join me as I take a shotgun ride with Mark Gent, lifelong baseball fan.
At 9 years old, I sat down in my family living room and I watched my first baseball game. Me and my brother watched Game 6 of the 1986 World Series when the ball rolled through Bill Buckner's legs.
I was watching that game.
That was the first baseball game I watched.
With 2 out, 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Watching that game, and when that ball rolled through Bill Buckner's legs, I jumped out of the building.
I still remember jumping up and down in my parents' living room, and over the last few years, I met both Mookie Wilson and Bill Buckner.
Want to take a ride real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Seeing how much you love the game, how does that make you feel watching, your love of the game kind of transfer over to your kids?
So it's been really interesting. It was never something that I pushed. It's something that's just naturally happened. So they're all Dodger fans, I'll just say that, but they're at different phases of being baseball fans. The boys follow it, kind of generally. What's really surprised me is Brooklyn. She knows where her name came from my love of the Brooklyn Dodgers that I suggested to my wife. And she miraculously said, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. Something clicked in her that summer of 2020 during the pandemic where she just fell in love with baseball and became a rabid Dodgers fan. She is a bigger fan at 13 than I was at 13. And I was a pretty big baseball fan, but she knows the headlines. She knows our starting lineup before I do. She'll listen to the games on the radio late at night. If you're a Dodger fan and you live in Tennessee, and you want to watch and listen to games, it's a long 6 months of sleep deprivation. 75% of your games start at 9 o'clock. Sometime towards the end of 2020, after the season, after the Dodgers won, she was like, Dad, I want to go to the All-Star game in 2 years. I'm like, wow, that's okay. That's great. We got to find out how to finance this. And because she knows all about my business model was simply a fan. And I'm like, so yeah. Brooklyn, I can't afford to take you because you would cut into my profit margin and I would have zero profit margin. I said, and I also can't build your cost into the trip like mine is because then I might price some people out. I said, but I could cut you some deals and I won't charge you my service charge. You can stay in my hotel room that's paid for. We can do airline miles. And Sweet Brooklyn, she started saving her money. And I was like, it'll probably, for you, I cut all that out, you're probably talking $1,500. And she's 11 at the time. And would you believe it? Here we are 3 months out from the game, and she's got like $1,200 saved. And if that park had been open, I was going to...
Do you have 2 gloves?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Sure, yeah. I brought one for you. Sweet. All right. You get my glove from childhood.
Okay.
I've had that since I was like 11 years old. And I got my son's glove. Let's see. Oh, nice. It's just fun playing a game of catch.
Yes, it is. It's been a while, man. It's been a while. Y'all, that was a fun game of catch. It has been a while, trust me. Thanks for tagging along with me for that ride with Mark Gent. We want to thank everyone who tuned in this hour. We've got a great lineup of shows in store for you next week. Monday, we're spending the hour rounding up domestic violence resources and checking in 1 year after the tragic killing of Marie Varsos. Then we'll revisit our city's history and poetry and find out just how Nashville became a mural town. Don't forget to tune in. This is Nashville is a production of WPLN News and Nashville Public Radio. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Our producers are Steve Harouche, Rose Gilbert, and Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our digital lead is Anna Gallegos-Cannon. Michaela Elias is our technical director. Our executive producer is Andrea Tudhope. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Mr. Solfordell himself, Kara Zahn, Seth Owen, Aria Gerson, Blake Farmer, and Tony Gonzalez. The conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Facebook and Instagram, and tell us what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you Monday, everybody, and be good to each other.